Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CSU Staff Plenary, Assessing Support for LGBTQIA2S+ students in the CSU, which is part of the CSU Student Success Network's annual conference, Sustaining Momentum for Equity and Change in the CSU. My name is Ántonia Peigahi, my pronouns are she, they, and I will be moderating today's plenary. I serve as the Director of Policy and Records Management at California State University, and I've also served on the CSU Student Success Network's advisory board. As we continue to reflect on the intersectional identities of our students, staff, and faculty, and what they bring to our institutions, and the impact and expectations those diverse campus communities bring, what are CSUs doing to provide equitable, safe, and culturally relevant services for the LGBTQIA2S+ community? And what can they do better? This especially matters given the confluence of overt homophobic and transphobic rhetoric in the media and political discourse within the United States, and the psychological effects that has on an already marginalized community. And I believe it also ties into the increased need for CSU campuses to provide holistic basic needs support for our students. Our panelists are here to talk about the critical work they do to provide part of that holistic support to the LGBTQIA2S+ community on their campuses, and what we can do to better support the efforts of these and other middle leaders in gender and pride centers across the CSU. I am so honored to be joined today by Sérráno, whose pronouns are he, them, him, or they, them. Bree is the program director for the Queer Culture and Resource Center at California State Dominguez Hills. Joining Bree is Estevan Parra, whose pronouns are he, him. Estevan is the LGBTQ coordinator and the Cross-Cultural and Gender Center at the Cross-Cultural and Gender Center at Fresno State University. Joining Bree and Estevan is Pham, whose pronouns are they, them. Tranh is the Pride Center program coordinator at California State University, Sacramento. Please refer to the email you were sent to review and remember the conversational values today. And I do want to note that you may ask a question at any point during the discussion by entering your question in the Q&A box. We will do our best to respond to it in the last 15 to 20 minutes of the session. And without further ado, then I'm going to ask the first question, and I'm going to ask Bree to answer the first question, and then we'll simply round robin across. First of all, to the panelists, please talk about your campus role, responsibilities, and the scope of programming and services your center provides.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm Sérráno. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. I'm the program director of the Queer Culture and Resource Center at Cal State Dominguez Hills, as mentioned. And so really where I'm situated is under student retention and success, and under the umbrella of the multicultural centers on campus. So for responsibilities, I oversee all the supervision of student staff. If we have a graduate assistant, facilities management, programming, a lot of educational awareness on campus, although it's under student affairs. I would also say I do dip into policy development and feedback around trans inclusion, basically, or gender inclusion right throughout campus. And programming wise, we had our first LGBT History Month this month, and I had applied for a grant last year with some faculty, and we got money for that, which is phenomenal. We also host a queer leadership retreat in the spring, and have a lot of student-led programming, which is wonderful, and bringing in some local activists and educators.
Thank you. Tranh.
Very much similar to Bree at Sac State. I basically am the welcoming committee on campus for LGBTQ folks, students, staff, faculty, visitors as well. Just yesterday, we had a first-year experience seminar who are discovered the Pride Center for the first time. Outside of that structure, we become the receiving place for students to learn more about themselves, to learn more about each other, and how to be allies as well. Our programs include the Queer Welcome in the fall, and then it ends with the Lavender graduation. We have Pride Week programs, and speaking of Pride Week, it's happening here at Sac State next week. We brought it from the spring to elevate LGBTQ History Month. It was just strategic because we wanted students to meet sooner and folks to learn about LGBTQ issues sooner as well. Last year, I wrote a grant for a Lavender Experience seminar. Essentially, it's College Success 101 to help students learn together, right, and find community together and while navigating school. We do have safe zone trainings. That is our education for LGBTQ understanding and awareness, how to be allies, how to use pronouns, a little bit about the policies that shape students' experience here at Sac State. And then finally, we've been receiving a lot of interest and attention for learning more about LGBTQ, how to create more safe spaces on campus. And in my position, I also get to make recommendations to the institution as how we can be more trans inclusive. I'll leave that at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Estevan.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Once again, Estevan Parra, Guerrero, pronouncing him his. And I want to start by saying happy LGBTQ History Month and happy Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. So similar to Bree and Tranh, except, you know, I want to be fully transparent here today, right? I've been part of Fresno State for the last 14 years. I did my undergrad here, my master's, and working here, you know, as a staff member. So when I talk about Fresno State, it's all out of love, right? It's like talking about family. I just want to make that clear. So at the Cross Culture and Gender Center, unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have an actual Pride Center. You know, what we do have is one building in the middle, in the heart of Fresno State, and that building is divided or shared amongst 5 other departments, right? And right in the middle, we have the Cross Culture and Gender Center, such a small center, but very powerful and very a strong presence at Fresno State, and it's growing. It's been growing, by the way. What we do here is essentially through programming, through events, through educational services, we work together in community to fight against homophobia, transphobia, sexism, and other forms of oppression. Similar to you, Tranh, we have our rainbow graduation, which is supported by our president and cabinet members, which we're really grateful for because representation matters, right? And many other services and events. I always tell our students, I leave them with some homework, and I tell them, follow us at Fresno State CCGC, right? Look at all the events that have taken place. Look at all the services and events that are forthcoming. And if there's an event or a program that's missing, right, that reflects your identity, let us know, and we'll work together to make it happen. But the last thing I want to share is, and we'll talk more in detail momentarily, I am not just the LGBTQ coordinator. I am split into 3 roles. I have the Gender Programs and Services Coordinator position, LGBTQ Programs and Services Coordinator, and most recently, the Men's Success Initiative, because as you all may be aware, our men of color are not graduating. So I'll leave that up to you, how you want to interpret this role. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. The next question, and I know that's going to lead to a lot of fruitful conversation. The next question is really focused on what support do you have to perform your job or jobs? Because I know that in each instance, this is plural. There are a number of different responsibilities that you face. And coupled with the support that you have for your job, what does authentic, or what would authentic institutional support to build sustainable gender pride programs and centers look like for you? And I'm going to start us off with Tranh on this question.
Oh, yes, this is such a great question. Well, I guess so. Support. What support do I have in performing my job and serving my students? Well, I do have a center, and the institution has given us a center for students to essentially exist. We have our own Stonewall Inn here at Sac State, where students can come and just be themselves and find their community without that gender policing and being having a safe space, right, where they have resources, access to a culturally competent person who can affirm their experience and help them understand where they are in their life and how to best make use of their time here and of the resources that the school provide. It is a demanding job because as a coordinator, there are multiple hats that I can continually wear. It's direct student services foremost, front and facing, because under the umbrella of students affairs, we are all about student success. And student success looks different for our community members because there are those intersectional identities that students come into the center with. They're not just a member of the LGBT community. They're navigating class and gender and race and ethnicity and academia, in addition to a lot of new things that they might not have had the place to interrogate out before coming to school, coming to a higher education institution. So we have to take into account where they are. And while I believe we do the best we can in the center, sometimes I am, I feel like I'm drowning with the different types of needs that students have. We're not just talking about basic needs, but the traumas that students carry with them, especially LGBT students, that they've been carrying around for a while. And the ask that they have is not just, help me in this way. It's more like, how do you help me in this way that takes into account the other parts of me? And I think that's a really complex question. And even to find solutions for, right? I wish, I'm new in my role. This is my second year as a program coordinator. I'm starting. I came to Sac State as a graduate student in the counseling program, and I have since graduated with that degree, and it's helped me be so good at my job in the way that I can meet students' needs while advocating for them on an institutional level. But the support that I would need is finding more of my community doing this work. And I feel like I'm kind of siloed because I feel like I don't have that beautiful support of, like somebody who is a first generation professional, who is also LGBT, who is also a person of color, who is also helping students. I crave to get the training, the tools in my community. And I feel like I can learn so much more from my colleagues across the CSU. I can learn so much more from my peers in the community, but I feel very siloed in this work in that way, right? How does one give to students when we don't get that replenished? We do a good job of giving to students, but there are many students, right? But there's only one program coordinator who has a staff of part-time students who are still learning about the world themselves. So swimming through all of that with them is challenging. Let's see, so authentic institutional support to build a sustainable gender pride centers. I think, to be honest, I think it would be the institution would have to care and want to care about this population. And to me, I'm imagining what that would look like is studying our students' needs and our campus needs around this, right? Especially in contrast to all of the news that we're hearing that is so anti-trans and homophobic and sexist and all those other, right? So we need to investigate like how we're doing. Is our practices up to date? Is it meeting current needs? And I think something of that magnitude with a strategic plan with funding behind it is the kind of institutional commitment that I see. So I will stop there.
Thank you so much. And we know certainly at Sacramento State, President Nelson, the campus president, talks about budgets as moral documents. And I think it's a really important point to think about the morality behind, again, the services that we provide and how we're funding those sets of services. Bree, what support do you have to perform your role and serve your students, especially given, again, you've tied in student retention and success to the work that you're doing, as well as policy development, which is near and dear to my heart. And what do you think authentic institutional support looks like or could look like?
Yeah, I think currently right now, so I do appreciate and value that I'm one of the few folks in the Cal State system that is in a management position, so an MPP1. That is not the case in many of our campuses, let alone having a full-time staff member. I just want to name that. So I will be hiring a coordinator come spring. So if anyone wants to apply. But, you know, I will have a second person to support the work, right? Which I think is huge. And I will say in the interim, my colleagues are phenomenal. My immediate coworkers, colleagues across campus, I see some of y'all here, they have also been committed to doing the work. And I think that in order to do the work well, our space is very small. You know, I have one office space, so definitely need more than that when the coordinator comes on. And I think definitely, you know, when it comes to budget, right, we've talked about that already. And so there have been instances of one-time funding, there has been a recent increase in funding. And so how can that be sustainable, right? I'm thinking specifically for a lot of the students that we serve at Dominguez, experience food insecurity. And so being able to literally feed them, right, is so important. And I know with inflation, a lot of things have increased, right? So even with our budget, being mindful of that with the increase in inflation. I think, you know, authentic institutional support. I think the first thing that comes to mind is, so Dr. Z. Nicolazzo talks about trans killability. And so, right, specifically for trans women, that there is a killability happening of trans people, not just physically, in the academy as well, like mentally, emotionally, and bodies being used to sit at a table figuratively, right? And not necessarily being taken seriously. And so I think that's something for institutional leaders to consider of how is that being perpetuated? Or even staff or faculty, whoever is here, right? How is one contributing to the killability of trans people, right? And what does that look like on college campuses? Because again, I think, I mean, Estevan, right? You shared so many multiple layers to your role. That is unsustainable, right? There needs to be a larger commitment from top down. And I don't mean just the president, I mean, the chancellor's office, right? In 2018, the UC system had a very large commitment to having specific requirements for staff, for budgeting, for, you know, all gender restrooms, facilities, et cetera, right? That needs to happen from the Cal State system as well, because we're one person shows doing 5 people's jobs at a UC. So I would say that, I think in general, like I said, I'm very grateful for my colleagues and coworkers, and thinking about the labor, how can that be shifted, right? So that the emotional taxation isn't there as much. That can be shifted to colleagues or faculty, right? And not having to pull in the person doing this work all the time, every time something happens, right? Because it's defeating in our own existence, right? Is exhausting. And so I would say, I think Dominguez is definitely at a different place in terms of staff hiring that's going to be happening, as well as myself. And of course, nowhere is perfect, right? So I just wanted to provide some context.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for the background noise going on. Estevan, you've talked about the multiple roles that you embody and encompass on your campus. What support do you have to perform your job and serve your students? And again, what would it look like authentically at an institutional level to give you, and again, this is aspirational, to really allow you to provide the services, and not just you, potentially others, to provide the sets of services to really give the LGBTQ plus community what they need on our campuses.
Thank you. I first want to share, well, I agree with Bree in regards to budget. Of course, money, always a problem here, but with Tranh, right, it does, often it feels like we're the only ones doing this work, right? And, I'll give you an example. I've often have faculty or staff, hey, Estevan, I had this student come to my office hours and they want to know more about your resources. So here you go. And I really want to reply, my friend, you should come too. How about that? Come learn about these resources too. Because it shouldn't be just Tranh or Bree or Estevan, or it should be all of us, right? It should be everyone's responsibility. But when it comes to support, when it comes to support to do this work, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, my biggest support, I'm getting emotional, it's my student staff. Lexi, Angel, Bree, Cher, and Abigail. Without them, honestly, there wouldn't be no gender and LGBTQ programs and services. And they often remind me to slow down and breathe, right? Something that I wish my higher ups would do, and check in on our mental health. Because boy, is this work so taxing emotionally, mentally. Right prior to the pandemic, I had a student who had just came out to family and said, Estevan, I'm about to be homeless. What do I do? Right? And then boom, we get to go home because the campus shut down. And I think of those students, right? Something that I want you all to understand here today is that when you come to Fresno State or higher education, you might be Latinx and experience racism, but think about being Latinx and also queer. That double mental energy, anxiety, depression. And then we wonder why our LGBTQ youth have the highest suicidal rates, right? So again, when it comes to my support system, they're my students. For the second question, what does authentic institutional support to build sustainable gender pride centers and programming look like? I think we could definitely start by hiring more professional staff, right? And give us additional spacing. The CCGC, the Cross Cultural Gender Center, has outgrown the space. This center was initially started to serve students and students only. However, throughout its 7 years of existence, we have served first and foremost students, but also staff, alumni, faculty, and community members. And I do want to give a shout out to the current and former presidents for being allies to the LGBTQ plus community. Because for the first time in 110 years, we raised the pride flag at Fresno State last year. And this year, we are offering gender affirming care, thanks to the leadership of the Fresno State Faculty and Staff Allies Network, of course, the CCGC LGBTQ programs and services, the Student Health and Counseling Center and the Office of the President, and the most important voice, the Fresno State students. So that's just a way of showing, you know, I guess, authentic support from our leadership. But I've always said this, and I'll say it again, probably until I, you know, retire from Fresno State. We have come a long ways, but there's still so much work that we need to do. Not Estevan, we. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think one of certainly the experiences that I've felt as a queer person is both joy at being who I am, but also associated sets of traumas. And thank you again for acknowledging the sets of traumas that our students experience, as well as we do. And as a follow-up question that I'm just going to open up to whoever would like to answer this, in our preliminary meeting around this conversation today, Tranh used the term emotional cannibalism. And you all put so much of your whole authentic selves into this work. In what way does your campus provide you with the needed tools to either avoid this cultural and physical taxation on yourself or to cope with this? And maybe the answer is that they don't.
Yeah, I think the silence is very telling. I think, at least at Dominguez, right? There's definitely pockets. I feel like, you know, and this isn't any one person, right? It's just systemic. And I think on this campus specifically, when I first came here, I came to an understanding that because it's located in Carson, next to Compton, South Los Angeles, came out of the Watts Rebellion, that it was very social justice oriented, right? What I think it meant and what it still means for some people is that race and ethnicity is it. I think that there is continual work to be rid of essentialist experiences that happen for cisgender Black and brown people and beyond that, right? So I think that's the work that I do and I challenge others to do. And I think for other support, I mean, again, my colleagues are phenomenal. The students, of course, are phenomenal. They're so real. I love it. There's so many things coming to mind that I won't say. It's not they can genuinely exist, and that gives me so much joy to see that at their age, and I'm aging myself, at any age, right? They're just existing and living their best lives. The other day we had our National Coming Out Day luncheon, and over 150 people came. That has never happened for one of our programs. And it was beautiful to have music, rainbow fans, like stickers, whatever it was, right? People just dancing. And it was gorgeous. And I wish that, you know, everyone on campus could be able to not just see that, I think just see everyone who's queer and trans for who they actually are, right? And I'm not sure if that happens. And I think for me, I mean, I have good benefits. I think we all may as state employees, you know, my therapist, my medicine. Those things keep me going.
I guess when I was making that comment, when I was talking about emotional cannibalism, it was more like the experience of giving to students, right? The direct services. Our institution's our school's about 31,000, north of 31,000, you know, we're a commuter school, but we're one small pride center, right? And there are students who come in on a consistent basis, and we're always giving them and affirming to them and providing the best service we can But then at the end of the day, what do we have for ourselves? And it feels really exhausting, right? That cultural taxation, the emotional labor to give them the what they didn't get at home or in their social group, in their society even, right? The stressors, the ambient stressors that go on, seeing the news every day that's targeted with policies and laws that's targeted against LGBT folks. And then so I'm thinking, like, what do we have for us on specifically on campus? I mean, we do have a good benefits program like the employee assistance program, the EAPs, but then, it seems it doesn't seem like it would do the job. And it's only a limited number of sessions that you would get with a mental health professional who may not understand or be a fit, who doesn't quite understand, the stressors of working in a higher education institution. And yeah, their students are very inspirational, but it's also inappropriate to go to them with problems that are at this level, right? And then there aren't too many leaders above us to help diffuse some of that emotional tension that comes with the work. I hear that timely MD is a thing now, but I think that's not LGBT. If we think about it, it's not a solution that is long-term or affirming for our students. It might do the job right now, but for students, I don't think that's, I hope we don't head towards that way where we're using apps to navigate that. It really undermines what we're trying to build. So I think I get most of it from my EAG, the queer and trans faculty and staff. However, their faculty and their staff are not quite running our Pride Center, so that in direct dealing with this many students per day, but they do the best they can. And we find support that way.
If I could add, right, thank you, Tranh, for sharing. We're in the process of hiring a University Diversity Officer, UDO, for the first time in Fresno State's history. So we're really excited here at CCGC, right? We're thinking, hopefully this person understands the work that we do and advocate. But then, here we go to the open forum and we have faculty, like, what are you going to do for faculty and faculty this? And I'm like, I wish the UDO, I wish there was a forum for just staff and then faculty too, but it almost felt like, anyways, that's a whole different topic, but that's our hope, right? And we're, and again, I'll speak for myself. I like to give my leadership the benefit of the doubt, right? But when is enough, right? When is enough? And I do want to recognize my director. She always encourages us to take mental health days, but then you question, right? If I take the day off, like I did for the 4th time in my 3 years here, then I'm super behind at work for the rest of the week. And it shouldn't be that way, right? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really reminded of, again, the intersectional struggle for queer trans liberation. And again, one of my mantras has always been, we're not free until we are all free. And it is a challenge, again, to recognize that our fight is not just a fight for, again, queer trans liberation, but it is a holistic fight across the intersectional identities and the stratifications that we find in not only American society, but beyond. And I'm struck by, again, struggle. And so the next question is, in 1969, we had the Stonewall riot, which was, as we know, literally a riot. In that vein, how do we disrupt tokenism as queer people, as middle leaders, and how do we move beyond us and our students becoming spokesmodels of this work and instead have the work enmeshed within the culture of the institution? And I'm going to first ask Estevan to chime in, and then from there, we'll move on. And I'm happy to read the question again, Estevan.
You know, I need some time to process the question. So can I go maybe next?
Absolutely. Bree or Tran, would you like to jump in next?
Pam, you want to go? If not,
I'll give it a try. Okay. Ooh, this is another great question. Okay. I think we can disrupt this by building connection to larger communities, right? So that we are not just doing the work ourselves, but to advocate and educate enough that other folks are taking on the mantle of that work. Because the Pride Center is not an island. We are all in this together. And we think about, I'm going to borrow something from Dr. Robin DiAngelo, whose work is around anti-racism, and she has this book called Nice Racism, right? And so I think that question for us is, what does nice homophobia, transphobia look like, and how do we all carry that? And what are we doing to to affirm this work of anti-racism, essentially, anti-racism, anti-homophobia, anti-transphobia, anti-sexism, anti-genderism. So I imagine us looking at the way we show up. As an individual, as a group, as an institution. I think that's where we start. Okay, great. Estevan.
I could go next. Thank you, Tran, for backing me up here. You know, I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting really tired, y'all. There, I said it. I haven't talked to my colleagues about this, and they're here in the center. But I'm getting ready to throw this white rag in the ring, right? It's just a lot of work. It's mentally draining. And I'm not here to, like, again, oh, poor Estevan, I'm sorry. No, this is our reality for most of us here today. On October 15, 2019, I was hired to oversee 2 programs, right? Gender and LGBTQ. And at first I was questioning it because I was like, these are 2 different, what is going on here, right? Not to mention, a lot of other CSUs have 1 professional per program getting paid more than what I'm making here, overseeing 3 programs now. And everyone's quiet about that part, right? I feel that being a person of color and LGBTQ, a lot of the times we have to put our trauma and our experiences on display for people to listen to us. And again, who checks in on us, right? Who's checking in on our mental health? So I finally understand that, and I call it a self-care statement. When people say you have to put on your oxygen mask first before you help others, I didn't understand that statement throughout the whole pandemic, working from home. I'm not proud of saying this, but you will catch me working till 9, 10 p.m., right? Because I saw the need. Right? And I didn't feel comfortable saying, well, it's 5 o'clock. Y'all students could figure it out. No. But if I could be fully transparent, I can no longer stay past 5, 6 p.m. Like, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's not, you have never, ever, and you probably will never hear me say, I don't get paid enough for that. We don't, right? That's the true reality in this country. We don't appreciate education like other countries. So you will never catch me say, I don't get paid for that. But the truth is, I just mentally, I don't have a capacity and I'm losing my crap, you know? And now I'm pursuing a doctorate like Bree. Sorry, Bree, to put you on spotlight here. And I don't want to hear colleagues saying, well, you're in a doctorate now, so you're stressed. I've been stressed since October 15, 2019, homie. Sorry, the South Central just came out. I apologize. I'm not gonna apologize for that. So what I want to end by saying is, if there's one thing that I learned from the pandemic is that we can't do this work alone. We have to work in community. So at Fresno State, we have 4 pillars. We have the United Student Pride, which is a student club. By the way, tonight that we celebrating their 35-year anniversary, and Dr. Peter Robertson is here, the founder of the club. Thank you, Dr. Robertson, for being here today. The second is the LGBTQ programs and services, within the CCGC. The third is the Faculty and Staff Allies Network. And the fourth is the Fresno State Rainbow Alumnex and Allies Club. So I want to give those 4 organizations a shout out. Because of them, we do work in community to roll out, some of our annual events and really check in on one another. One of my favorite questions, the last thing I want to share, is when people really sincerely ask, how are you holding up? And how can I support you? I love that so much. Thank you.
Estevan, I don't know how you're doing it. I don't know how you're doing it. I'm here too, if you need any support. I'll give a couple thoughts, and I know we want to get to questions from the audience. So I'll give you an example of something that's come up multiple times this semester already. It's what, week 7? It's probably happened about 7 times already. Myself and a colleague being called each other's names. They're also queer, non-binary, Latinx. We look nothing alike, right? And it's not even just like, hey, Bree, or hey, the other person's name. It's been emails, voicemails. Like when you type in my email, my first letter of my name does not start with the same letter name. In person, etc. Right? And so I think even though I may not be the only one tokenized, there is still something happening there, right? Of this correlation, because we're queer, we're automatically the same person, right? Which is really strange. It's not that strange. I would also say, there's instances where I've had faculty and staff share with me their identities and say, I can't talk to my coworkers about this. I can't say this in my office of, I don't know, like admissions, for example, right? Or outreach, whatever, right? And I'm like, why though? Like, I know why, and this shouldn't be their only experience in place in person for them to share. And so I think with folks who are on as participants, thinking about how am I creating that environment of exclusion and oppression in my department, in my area, in my unit, whatever it may be, in my classroom, inadvertently, maybe it's on purpose, I don't know, but like, I don't think it'd be here, it's on purpose. That could be contributing to that behavior, right? Or a sense of insecurity or lack of safety, because that's happening, whether or not it's recognized. And I think, there have been times where I'm like at the table as a spokes model, right? And again, it gets exhausting. We have hired our first chief diversity officer, and I think a lot has been handed off to her. And I recently was misgendered in a very open public meeting by some senior level folks. And I spoke to someone and, it was a lot of excuses, right? There was no apology or recognition that even happened. And my question to the person was, it's not about me. I experience this every day. What does this say about the climate on this campus? How is this landing for people in the room, or where that's going to be taken outside of the room, right? It's like a ripple effect when something drops into the water, right? It spreads. And so it's something to consider, right? How to even navigate those difficult conversations when they come up, and accountability, because it's not about the person who completed the, harm. It's about the person who is impacted. And so really trying to reframe that and think about that in doing self-work.
Thank you so much. And I understand what it's like to be mistaken. I was at a national conference and somebody said, oh, hi, so-and-so, and I said, that's, you have the wrong trans person here. Sorry. So understand what that feels like. We have seen from what you've said, an increase in the demand. And I had the opportunity to join the Queer Trans Faculty Staff Association for lunch on Monday at the Pride Center, which was packed on our campus. It was fabulous to be there with the students. What can faculty and staff do to contribute to the support that should be provided for LGBTQ+ students on our campuses? And really, what is the role for our cisgender allies, our heterosexual allies in this work? And I'm going to go with Estevan first.
All right. So what can faculty and staff do, you mentioned, or you want to talk about the presence of the increase? Sorry, Ántonia.
You know, I think, you know, the question really is, again, with this increase in services and demand on your time, what can our allies across the campus community do?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. Look, I'm first of all, I want to share that I'm very happy, and it brings so much joy. We do have a little room. It's like the size of my closet, really small. We call it TOC Pride Room. And you know, before the pandemic, we had 4 to 5 students who will come to our weekly discussion groups. And now we have at least 18 to 22 that come every week. And they have obviously are growing the space because, you know, fire marshal. So now they're using the conference, our conference room. And even then, some people are standing. So obviously, right, you're right, Ántonia, the need is increasing as we speak. So what can faculty and staff do? You know, again, don't wait for Bree or Tranh to lead the ways. Those who are here today, I recognize a couple of faculty. Come with us and join the journey. And we all said it, we need space. We just built a $60 million building at Fresno State. And guess what? There is no space for DEI or LGBTQ, right? It's no one else questioning this. So my advice is stay curious, right? Ask a lot of whys, you know. I think a true ally, I mean, you have to first and foremost recognize your privileges and then turn around and see who's behind you and how can you uplift them, right? So not just for LGBTQ, but people of color and so on. Just do that self-check of your privileges and then look back from time to time and say, wait, who's in the back of the room, right? So again, reach out to us and hear us out and how can we work again in community, but also be sincere and authentic, because Bree and Tranh, let me know if you have experienced this. I have had faculty and community members and staff. Hey, Estevan, we should work on this. Sure. And next thing you know, who's a dummy staying to 10 p.m. doing all the work? But who shows up the day of the event? Right? We did it. Sure. So when people reach out to support, I always say, that's a great idea. How can I support you? And oftentimes I get crickets. So be authentic and be sincere. If you have the time, great. If you don't, try again next year. Thank you.
If I could jump on. So I would say, you know, be receptive and okay with feedback, if provided any, whether it be from faculty, staff, students, whoever it may be, right? Because it's important to be humble and conscious of one's own privileges. I would also say be okay with receiving the answer no. I have said no a lot the past few years because I literally cannot do it all. My staff can't do it all. Our students at Dominguez, I'm so sorry, Slack. Our students at Dominguez, you know, they have kids, they're working multiple jobs. Like I can't say all the time, hey, can you go do this tabling event on a Saturday during the middle of their shift for another job, right? It's okay to say no. That's a complete sentence. And I want folks to be able to receive that, you know, because that does a lot more for me than somebody tapping me out more, if that makes sense. And yes, I agree with Estevan 100%. Make it be a genuine collaboration. There's been some committees where people are totally great at presenting ideas. When it comes to follow through, nothing, you know, and that's very taxing as well.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I love for faculty and staff to come to the table and figure out how to take things off the plate that we do. Is it giving time? Is it expertise? Is it serving on committees? Is it helping us with our reach and our effectiveness? How do they use their privilege when we're not around, right? Advocacy doesn't happen, you know, in front of us. It could, that'd be great, but it's what's said that's behind, you know, when we're not there. That makes me wonder how much of an ally they are if they can't stand up to just, you know, homophobic jokes or transphobic statements, or not really advocating when we're, you know, for us when we're not there. And I love that, as Estevan, you had said, you know, now I'm thinking about, hey, yeah, instead of like sending students to the Pride Center and joining them, maybe learn more about what we do here and tell them about it in the classroom. Oh my goodness, that would make it so much easier. It's nice to know where we're located, but deepen that relationship and build that for us. I would love to have a faculty and staff mentorship program for our students. You know, our students are considered first generation. They don't have a gay elder in their life to tell them how to give them a different perspective, right? And then even more so for folks who had lost a whole generation of folks due to AIDS, right? And that was being rebuilt, excuse me. But yeah, that giving up that time and their wisdom and their energy and really helping us make better connections and deeper connections, and not just on campus, but off campus and into the future.
Thank you so much. We have one final question amid the myriad questions that I want to ask, because I feel like this conversation could be expanded for basically the rest of the day, and it would be wonderful to be in community that way, but we can't. So the final question before we move towards Q&A is, there has not been, to my knowledge, a CSU-wide initiative to support, uplift, and serve LGBTQ+ students. What is the potential for queer affinity within the CSU, and what is the role of middle leaders, not just you as middle leaders, but middle leaders across the CSU to push for this? And I think we're going to start with Estevan, and then Bree and Tran can jump in as they wish. And again, I apologize about my bad sound.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll make my response short. Again, I think for middle leaders, just staying curious, right? Asking questions, the why, right? But I mean, I'll speak about what I'm doing, and again, real short response. But I always tell my students that they have to use their voice, even if it shakes, right? And that's what I'm doing here today. Getting emotional, my Spanglish coming out, all that good stuff. So I don't know about you, Bree and Tran, and everyone here in this call today, but we're planting all these seeds, right? And we're doing all this important work. And I'm really excited for the future to see what Angel, Lexi, and Bree, and the students that we're leading, what they're gonna do next, the next generation. What are they gonna do next to pay it forward, just like we're doing today? So I'm excited about that.
I can add. So I think, yeah, like I said previously, right, there needs to be really top down. I think we can definitely push as coordinators and directors to have a seat at the table for the chancellor's office. I think a great example of that, and I noticed somebody asked in Q&A, is demographic collections. So CSU Applies does allow you to say yes or no for your identification in terms of being LGBTQ. I think some definitions that are provided on there are horribly inaccurate. I don't think that there is transparent communication in terms of what is informing these definitions, and that in turn can trickle down to students not feeling a sense of belonging, even with an application to begin with. I think there needs to be a CSU-wide initiative to have us all at the table. And I don't mean just like on Zoom, I mean literally coming to the chancellor's office, all expenses paid, meals, hotel, boardroom, to sit down and talk about what do we want to accomplish in the Cal State system within the next 10 years, 20 years even, right? Because if anything, there's going to be continual retribution of queer and trans bodies politically. And even though it seems like California is a haven, it's not. And so I think there needs to be very long-term strategic planning from the chancellor's office. I think we can definitely push it, although we aren't the decision makers necessarily, right? Sustainability, I would say, again, doing one's own work. You know, sometimes I get emails saying like, oh, what is this pronoun? And it's actually a prefix, like Google is a thing. If that could be figured out in other means, try to do that first, you know. That would be great. I think with faculty, you know, I think the thing, and I'm getting my PhD right now, is I don't know if faculty are necessarily always taught in their programs how to facilitate discussion when things come up like this, you know, how to respond if somebody says something transphobic or homophobic or racist or anti-immigrant, whatever it may be, how to identify those things before they come up and think about how would you respond as the faculty, because you're central to how that conversation goes. So I would really have folks think about how they navigate different scenarios as they come about.
If I could add real quick, Bree, because you reminded me of something really important. Sorry, Chan, real quick. There's a book that I received, Chancellor's Office, that was mailed to me about taking pride of, you know, being one of the largest higher institution systems, and it talked about the gender, the demographics. And I'm not making this up, and I was looking for the book, that's why I went missing for a few seconds, but it has female and male, and it's like whatever, 56%, you know, female and 44% male. And I'm like, that's a huge discrepancy, because we're not including the students who identify as transgender or gender non-binary, right? And this booklet I received 2 months ago, so it's 2022. So again, ask questions, y'all.
Well, yeah, I did see that booklet. You can get it at the CSU website page. I think they put out it annually. That hasn't changed very much. But you're right, right? How are we even affirmed in data collection and research for the CSU? That's one place that we exist, right? Is in the data. And if we're not there, then how can we be seen? I believe that the work that we do has to be consistent and sustained. It's not one of those one-time thing, that the work that we do to learn and unlearn and become who we need to be in order to continue to do this work and uplift and support LGBT students in the community is consistent. And what does that consistency look like? I also think the campus presidents and executives need to go out and lobby for us to raise those fundings at a legislative level. it's because we need well-funded and well-supported programs. That's how the institution can be behind that. Also, wouldn't it be great if we had a maybe annual or semi-annual event like the admissions do, right? Where they all get together and they have their training. I don't know how often that happens, at least once. But I think that would be a wonderful thing for us to meet our CSU LGBTQ Pham. It's overdue. And that would be great if it could come from the chancellor's office, right? To help organize that. What other programs have. Yeah, that's what I've got at the moment. Thank you.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to thank all of you so much for your honesty, for just the conversation that we've had thus far. We're going to move into the Q&A portion of today's panel presentation. And the first question is, as a faculty member and ally, I always look for ways to improve how I support queer students on campus and to answer the call to share the responsibility for doing this work. According to students, what are some of the, or what you've heard from students, what are some of the most impactful things that faculty and staff can do to support and encourage and affirm our students? I'm just going to open this up to anybody that wants to jump in first.
So real quick, just a quick example, and I know that Tranh and Bree, you're gonna have more examples to offer recommendations, but recently I started school, right, 7 weeks ago, and my faculty, he identifies as a part of the community, and he started by, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. X, Y, and Z. Pronouns, he, him, his. And this is why pronouns matter and are important. And I'm like, thank you, you know? And yes, half of the class was like, what? What's going on? But you know what I mean? So back to your question, if you're a faculty, you want to be create a more affirming and safe space, that's a great start. And guess what? There's tons of free webinars like this one. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for the question.
Absolutely. Modeling there. So yeah. Bree, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I think modeling is phenomenal. I think, like I said before, thinking about, I think when I do trainings and stuff, people like case studies. So think about some case studies, right? Think about if somebody were to say something on Zoom or in the classroom, or if things get heated, right? How would you respond? And be able to provide feedback and challenge, right? Students who may be providing maybe the usage of certain inappropriate words, right? Or even challenging their mentality and socialization around these concepts. In obviously a way that you can with academic freedom that I don't know if I have, because I also teach. There are ways that I have to show up to my full-time job that I can do otherwise in the classroom. And so I would also say, even on your syllabus, right? Putting your pronouns, talking about what pronouns are, and expectations of the class to engage in authentic, respectful dialogue, right? And what that means. And you could even give guidelines, right? Community guidelines at the beginning of class. And then I would say under resources, not just the LGBT Center on campus, but even if there's nonprofits in your local area, maybe national hotlines, things of that nature, that I think really go a long ways to show that you're being very conscious of the way you're communicating and supporting students.
I agree with both. I love when leaders introduce themselves and use pronouns. I think about who at our institution who does it on a consistent level, the highest ranking person who can do that on a consistent level, I think sets the tone on the places that they go, right? I remember we had Dr. John Johnson. He was the former director of the Centers for Diversity and Inclusion when we were like the Pride Center, the Women's Resource Center, and the Multicultural Center. And he consistently went around whenever he introduced himself and used his pronouns. And I just thought that was the weirdest thing, but I was a student at that time and really new to that. But I was appreciative and can see the value in that normalizing, right? How we speak about ourselves, how we introduce ourselves, and disrupting assumptions that we make about people. Another thing that I saw that worked and makes my job easier is, for example, we have a students organization and leadership has this summer conference for student leaders and clubs. And I thought it was so cool that they invited our division of inclusive excellence out. And because it was at the beginning of the school year and students are still new and learning, we got to hear that collaboration and that that endorsement of this is what we care about and why we are here. I think I also learned that we could be the first CSU with a fully staffed diversity and inclusion team, and for them to come up there and give the keynote speech and welcome our students I can see like how that could make my job easier, right? Because they would be doing the heavy lifting while I can focus more on the day-to-day operations of direct student services and lightweight training. And so it's nice to have their presence there and for them to share a little bit about what they do and how they could be of service to our students and for the institution. These are the main things that I see helpful in addition to faculty being prepared on how to address the transphobia and homophobia, sexism and genderism in the classroom. And it's providing resources in the syllabus, including why we use pronouns. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've seen recent statistics that talk about an increase in identification within Gen Z and some of the newer generations around queer identification, which goes to the next question, which is how can you speak to what data collection looks like for queer students on campus? And how do you think that better data collection might inform how we create student success programming that advances equity for queer students?
I could go first. I think there's opportunities to explore how we can do data collection better. This year, I believe we have 24 identified non-binary students who have started Sac State, and I think there's more than 24, and there is definitely increase. As compared to last year, it's 100% increase from the number of students who are identifying as non-binary. And that's great, right? We're doubled non-binary students in the year that I've been coordinator here at Sac State at the Pride Center. But I wonder if there's a better way to do that without outing folks, and also helping them understand the difference between sex and gender, right? When we're collecting data on gender, are we asking about their biology, or are we asking about how they perceive themselves? So that's not even very clear in the application, right? And do people know what cisgender, man and cisgender woman is? And I'll stop.
I'll share a bit. So I think, well, we have mentioned already the issues with the CSU apply, so that's that. I think, something that I do is we track our data of students coming into the center, not to track the gays, but really to understand the demographics of who's coming into the space, right? who are we serving, who maybe isn't showing up, are they transfer students, are they Black, brown, you know, et cetera. And so that's been really useful. And I think for retention wise, this is the first full year we've had full on 100% capacity, you know, in a few years. And so that'll be interesting to see the data at the end of the year of who is coming in. Something that irks me, and there's some colleagues I think that are still here that that I've shared this with, you know, like the Male Success Alliance or initiative, whatever it may be. That's a lot, right? Just even calling it male. So are you also including people who are assigned male? Is it cisgender men we're talking about? Who is included, who's not included? Not even just in name, but in culture, right? In climate. And thinking about that, right? I think it's great that those programs are funded, and where's the complexity of identities within that, right? And not to say Estevan's not doing that. I'm sure he's doing a great job. And just asking questions, right, about these larger initiatives that could also be disaggregated more.
And if I could add real quick, yes, those CSU questionnaire demographics. But I'm really grateful, and I want to give a shout out to our OIE office here at Fresno State, the people who collect the data, because allies are important. And there's a colleague in there who they're literally creating a dashboard, an internal dashboard. And as of right now, which I know the numbers are much higher, but based on the CSU application, when folks apply for Fresno State, we have over 1,300 students who identify as LGBTQ, and over 5,000 selected unsure or chose to decline. And at Fresno State, we have 25,000 students, right? But think about this, everyone. If you're a senior, right, and you're applying for, and you have your parents or your counselor in the back, and you're not ready to show your true colors, I'm sorry, but what Estevan did, heterosexual, straight, even though I knew I love Beyonce and Selena Quintanilla all the way through, right? But anyways, that's that.
We are basically at time. And unfortunately, there's two fabulous questions in the inbox. The first one about infiltrating space outside of LGBTQ plus or gender centers. And the other one about queer joy. And both of those are really incredible topics, I think, to explore. I especially love the idea of subversively infiltrating spaces where we're not particularly welcome, or where we've not been perceived as being welcome, and the challenges that comes in. But however, I just want to thank all of you so much for being part of the panel conversation today. I want to thank our producer for being part of this, and thank you for all that you do for our students, in again, facilitating the work of transforming student lives and their success, and seeing the whole student as opposed to just one identity that they bring, that our students are whole, complex people, as are you. And I look forward to having a conversation, hopefully with all of you, among others, about how we're going to get a CSU summit on queerness. So absolutely, thank you so much.